I would like to tell you about the Brazil. Please forgive me my accent because, well, I am Russian. And don't be afraid that I am Russian, because I'm not simply Russian. I'm just a Russian software engineer, and Russian software engineer are not so bad. For example, one of the Google founder, Brin, was from Russia. So, okay, recently I spent in the Brazil 4 months. 4 months. It is much more than the regular travel usually spends in the Brazil. And I live in the apartment of our relatives, and our relatives have been living in Brazil about 10 years or maybe even more. So I have a deeper knowledge about the Brazil. On the one hand, I have a deeper knowledge about the Brazil than the regular traveler, and from the other hand, I have a fresh eye. So and you know, yes, I did my homework. I read this very good, I believe very good, Lonely Planet guide about the Brazil. Very good book. I recommend it. I read it before I traveled to Brazil, but many things were still unexpected for me. So I will try not to repeat this Lonely Planet guide and tell what is unexpected for me in Brazil, maybe unexpected for you also. To begin with, I should mention that I really love Brazil. However, naturally, I will talk about the problem, unexpected things, just you to be warned. So, okay, let's begin. First difficulty, first problem is, of course, long distance flight. Our flight was 14 hours, and probably you also cannot avoid these 14 hours. This is a long distance flight, and all these 14 hours you sit in the chair, in the seat in the plane. Of course, if you have money can solve many problems. You can buy first class seats, or you can rent a private plane and sleep all this flight. However, I will talk about the economy class, because I will talk mainly about my own experience, and I traveled in economy class. So, okay, what you can do to survive this long distance flight? First, if you have a slightest hint or for varicose vein, for heavy leg, for restless leg, buy so-called compression stockings. These compression stockings should be fit for your leg by some trained person, qualified person. So ask your physicians where you can buy or order such stockings. They should be exactly fit for a leg. They are not expensive, but you know, if you have slightest hint on such problems, it could be very bad consequence if you don't undertake some measures against these varicose veins. So first. Second, of course, it is important to walk by passages near the seats. And the best way to do it, if you in advance register the seats near the passage. Now, you know, by internet you can register in advance probably 30, probably 24 hours in advance, until other did it. And also, it is hard to believe, but one of the best ways to survive the long distance flight is some engaging reading or some engaging video. It, of course, should be very engaging for you personally, because tastes are different. So it is it would be good decision to order or rent video or buy or rent this book well in advance. Because so you could select the book and video that is very engaging for you personally. If you do it, you simply will not notice the flight. Of course, naturally, in the planes there are video, but the set of the videos are rather restricted, and it may be not engaging for you personally. And maybe you find Wi-Fi in the plane, but you'll never be sure. It could be expensive. So best bet to in advance rent, buy video books, very engaging, and you will not notice the flight. When you arrive at Brazil, the first problem is the language. Yes, language, because even in the international airport, rare person knows English. You should look for this person. So it is a very wise decision to learn a bit of Portuguese in advance. Because, if you even have phrase book, you can ask the question, but how you understand the answer? This is a problem. Because how our memory works, it would be good to begin to study the Portuguese a month or 2 months in advance. Because the best way to learn a foreign language is to learn about 30 minutes, but every day. Probably 1 month is enough to learn the very basic Portuguese vocabulary. And remember, you should understand how they answer it. So how you can do it? First, in the Lonely Planet guide that I have already mentioned, and by the way, I have all the reference in the description of this video. In this guide there are several pages, I don't remember exactly, probably 3 pages, something like this, of the very short and good Portuguese phrase book. Just learn it. There is a software that can help you to learn Portuguese. It is Anki. It is free for desktop and costs very small money for smartphones, for example, for iPhone. And it is an intellectual electronic flashcard system. And this flashcard, remember how good you answer how good you recall the particular words. If you recall bad, it could be shown you more frequently. If you recall well, remember well, it will be shown more. So it is rather quickly. You may learn the Portuguese using this flashcard, and you also can record the voice. In this sense, it can ask you questions by your own voice, so you may be sure that you understand Portuguese. And if you're ready to spend a little more money, you can use very good audio course, Pimsleur Brazilian Portuguese. This course have 50 years under its belt and proved its efficiency. So just learn this first phase of this audio course. It would be very, very useful. Remember, very rare person in Brazil speaks English. Okay, now about the money. In Brazil, they accept MasterCard, Visa, so it should be no problem. However, almost always you will be asked debito or credito, debit card or credit card. Many bank cards that actually are debito looks like credito in Brazil. So first answer credito. If you are wrong, you may always ask to try debito. Now about the cash. You really need more than about 100 reals per person per day in Brazil, and it would be not wise to have much cash with you because of pickpocketing. I will talk about the pickpocketing and the security later, but probably should mention that bank cards are accepted almost everywhere in Brazil. Even in taxis, many taxis accept bank cards, but you should ask first, because some accept only MasterCard, some only Visa, some only Credito, some only Debito, some don't accept. So in taxis you should ask in advance. Even the beach, some so-called street vendors, they accept these bank cards. Now about the climate, flu and antibiotics. In Brazil is hot and rather wet. And what does it mean? it was unexpected for us. Some plants, orchids, for example, epiphytes, so-called, they derive their nutrition from the air. Their roots are in the air. What does it mean? It's like a bouillon, like a soup. So there are many bacteria in the air of Brazil, much more than in the North America and Europe. And what does it mean? If you got a flu, because your immune system becomes weak, after 1 week you have complications, and usually even light cold lasts 3 weeks, not 1. So every Brazilian knows that, and as our relatives explained us, every Brazilian begins to take antibiotics at the very beginning of even light cold. But the problem is that you cannot buy the antibiotics in Brazilian pharmacies, in Brazilian drugstores without a prescriptions. It is very severe rule, and this rule is intentional because in Brazil there are many non-educated people. They drop taking the antibiotics too early and train the bacteria. Bacteria become resistant to the antibiotics, and it is a problem in Brazil. So in the Brazil you need prescription to buy antibiotics, and therefore I would advise to take with you broad spectrum antibiotics. Ask a physician which is better for you. No, at least you will be ill 1 week if you get cold, and not 3 weeks. Okay, another problem in Brazil, of course, sun. The sun is very strong. How strong? If you are not tanned, you may be sunburned, even you sit in the shade, even you sit under the umbrella under the beach. You may be sunburned, even there are clouds on the sky. Very strong sun. So at least at the beginning of your stay in Brazil, it would be wise to use sunscreen, lotion or cream or spray on all your open parts of the body, on the face, on the nose, on the ears, on the hands, at least at first days of your stay in Brazil. And it should have sun protection factor more than 30. 30, 40, it would be good. And you can easily buy these sunscreen stuff in Brazilian drugstores or pharmacies. There are many of them, and they are everywhere. And by the way, you can find in these drugstores not only the sunscreen lotion or sunscreen spray, but also many other self-care items. Mosquitoes. In Brazil, especially near the beach, there are plenty mosquitoes, but in São Paulo or in Rio de Janeiro, they are also present. And actually they're really dangerous only in the most hot part in Brazil, for example, near the Amazon River. In the Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, they are not dangerous. Probably, of course, you heard about the Zika virus. However, Zika virus, it is really dangerous only for the pregnant women, as far as I know, and only in the first 3 months of their pregnancy. Otherwise, it is not more dangerous than a regular cold, and as distinct of the cold, Zika is actually very rare. As far as I know, there were only a few cases, in really registered cases, proved cases of the Zika virus in Brazil. So forgot about Zika if you are not pregnant, of course. And the main problem with these mosquitoes that they disturb your sleeping. Oh, and of course, if you rent a room in some mid-range or 5-star class hotel, with air condition and sealed shut windows.
It's very important.
Sealed shut windows, probably you will have no problem with the mosquitoes. But if you have a budget hotel, not so expensive hotel, and or your windows are not sealed shut, or you don't like air conditioning, so probably it would be wise to take with you some portable electric repellent, fumigator sometimes they're called, that you can just plug into the electric socket, or special anti-mosquito coils or something like this. But if you forgot all this, use a fast-moving fan. These fans, they are almost in every hotel and in every Brazilian apartment. And the mosquitoes in Brazil are actually very light, and they are just blown out by the fans. So it's your last resort. The electricity in Brazil can be either 220 volts or 127 volts. The 127 volts sometimes marked as 110 volts. So you cannot guess what you will have. So
if your electric device
cannot be plugged in both 127 and 220 volts, just don't take this device with you.
Or buy a special electric converter
that can
convert
one voltage to another voltage. Okay, now about the hotels. Actually, I can say little about the regular hotels because we live
mainly in so-called pousadas. Pousadas are
small family-like hotels, usually one or two stored, and they are not actually bad because they may have a pool, you may have sometimes breakfast in this, take the breakfast in these hotels, so they are not bad at all and less expensive than the regular hotels, and you also can book these pousadas by internet. And also there is another options that often used by young people in Brazil, because in Brazil there are beaches, even the beaches for the wealthy people, very well secured beaches that not have the hotels near, but have just a row of condos near the beaches. And the owner of the apartments in these condos, they actually buy it not so for yourself, but mainly to lease them. And you also can rent this apartment in the internet. Condominium is rather good. They have pools, they have fitness facilities, they have secure gun. It's all very good. And young people, students in Brazil, often just rent
one apartment, then pack it with themselves.
About 10 people in one flat, they probably sleep in the bags, but then they just get the car.
Because there are naturally underground parking lots for the cars in these condos.
And they live in these condos in secure place and go to nearby clubs to dance. They call it go to balada. So you have these options also, and these apartments also can be rented by internet.